Welcome to this video on using Smart Scheduler in Estimator Express. Estimator Express allows you to round your estimated quantities. Smart Scheduler then creates order lists to help you book in labour and order plant and materials for a specified date. It also helps you to assign material ordering to subcontractors. We've produced two videos which show you how to create accurate order lists using Smart Scheduler. The first video covers resource substitutions and rounding resource quantities. We strongly recommend that you watch that video, which is linked below, before viewing this one. In this video, I'll talk you through scheduling your resources using Smart Scheduler. This video assumes that you've already made your resource substitutions and have carried out resource rounding. Smart Scheduler is available as standard in Estimator Express Enterprise Edition. Alternatively, it can be purchased as an add-on, either outright or on subscription, in the Estimator Express Smart Scheduler Bonus Pack. It's important to understand that Smart Scheduler is separate from the estimate. Any changes you make in Smart Scheduler will not have an impact on your estimate. It's assumed your estimate is complete before you look at Smart Scheduler. Open Smart Scheduler using the Navigator menu on the left-hand side of the screen. Estimator Express then reminds you that you need to complete your estimate, carry out resource substitutions and rounding, and set up your build program before using Smart Scheduler. In the Smart Scheduler screen, you can see the resource which has been specified in the estimate and its estimated quantity in the column on the left. On the right, you can see the resource and quantity which is going to be ordered. At the moment that's the same, but it can be changed. There are several things that you can do with each resource using the buttons on the right. You can assign the ordering of a resource to a subcontractor if you've quoted for the resource but the subcontractor is going to bring it to site. You can swap the resource if you want to select an alternative resource, or, as we're going to do in a moment, specify a particular branded resource. You can delete the resource if you don't need it for any reason. For instance, you've got some in the yard already. You can change the date a resource is required, or the order date. Here you can see the order date and date required for the resource within each build phase. Estimator Express schedules all materials to be available at the start of the build phase they're used in. So the date required you can see here is the start of the build phase, based on the build program. It might be that in the case of longer build phases, you want some items on site partway through the build phase. You can fine-tune when you need the materials delivered to site using the Edit Dates button. The order date is the date required minus the suggested lead time, which comes from the price book. Depending on the availability of materials, you might want to add a few more weeks onto the lead time and order a few weeks earlier. Use your judgment. You can also add an additional resource for a particular task. We'll come back to this a little later. Firstly, let's take a look at changing a resource. In the estimate, I've used an 80p allowance price for the facing bricks. But let's say I want to specify the exact brick I'm using. If a resource such as facing bricks is used in more than one build phase, there'll be a button to view that resource in all build phases. If you click Show this resource in all build phases, a filter is applied to show just that resource, but across all the build phases. This allows you to review the resource requirements for the estimate as a whole. Using the resource rounding tool, I previously rounded up the facing bricks for this job. If you haven't already viewed the video on resource substitutions and rounding, please view the video linked in the description box below before continuing with Smart Scheduler. In that video, I set the order quantities for facing bricks to round up to pallets of 500 across the job. Smart Scheduler has taken the total rounded quantity of 4,500 facing bricks and divided them proportionately between the two phases they're used in. So it's suggesting we order 82 bricks for the footings and 4,418 bricks for the masonry shell. We'll come back to the quantities in a moment. Let's start by swapping the facing bricks used in the footing. To swap a resource, click Change Resource. This opens up the price book. You can choose a resource from the price book, or as in this case, you can add a resource. So I'm going to add a brand specific brick. So type in the brick name, the cost, check all of the other fields, add it to the price book, and now it's selected, I can bring that brick into the Smart Scheduler order schedule. Please note that making this change has not affected the estimate. If you go back into the estimate, you'll see that an 80p facing brick allowance is still specified and the cost of your estimate has not changed. These changes are purely for scheduling purposes. On the left we can see what was specified in the estimate, and on the right we can see what we need to order, namely the 4 Terra clumber brick. We can change the facing bricks in the masonry shell phase to match. This time I don't need to add the resource because it's already in the price book. So now I've swapped the resource, we can look at the brick quantities. For some resources, rather than ordering 2 or more smaller quantities at different stages of the project, it may make sense to order in bulk and have the resource ready on site for later in the job. Of course, this is dependent on space on site, so you need to use your own judgment about that. Smart Scheduler has allocated 82 bricks to the footings and the remaining bricks to the masonry shell, which are being ordered a week later. Let's say I want to have all the facing bricks delivered together. To do that, I can increase the quantity in the footings phase so they're all delivered at the same time, and then set the number in the masonry shell to 0. You can either zero out the quantity or click delete resource, as it's not required. So hopefully you can see that we're taking the resource requirements from what's been estimated and rounded and turning them into specifically what's needed for the job. Let's have a look at another example. I'm going to clear the filter using the Clear Resource Filter button on the top right. This has removed the filter and taken me back to the footings. Let's take a look at the cement. Here's the Blue Circle Mastercrete Original Cement. Again, I'm going to view the cement in all build phases. You can see this cement is used in the footings, the masonry shell and plastering build phases. You can see we need 7 bags for the footings, 29 for the masonry shell and 15 for the plastering. You may decide that it would be more convenient to order a pallet of 60 at the start of the project for the footings and zero out the order requirements in the other build phases, as they'll already be sufficient on site. So all we need to do is edit the quantities as we did with the bricks. So we'll change the order quantity in the footings to 60 and zero out the requirements in the masonry shell and the plaster and build phase. The note at the top tells us that we're ordering 6 more bags of cement than our estimated requirements. If you're changing order quantities or moving ordering between phases, this helps you to see your current order quantities versus the estimated quantities and do a quick sense check to make sure you're ordering enough. When you do your estimating currently, chances are you quote for materials that in reality a subcontractor will be purchasing and bringing to site. I'm thinking decorator and plasterer for instance. With Smart Scheduler, once you've won the work, you can assign the resources to the subcontractor and remove the materials from your own material order reports. The subcontractor report will then show you which resources are assigned to which subcontract quote, so you can keep track of who is ordering what. Let's say we have a subcontractor plasterer who's supplying the materials. I'm going to clear the resource filter again, and then select the plastering build phase from the drop-down filter. Here we're looking at a list of all the materials used in the plastering phase. So I'm going to pick out the resources that the plasterer is going to bring with him. So firstly, the plasterboard adhesive. To assign a resource to a subcontractor, click the Assign to Subcontractors button. I've estimated the job with plastering automatically estimated for the walls, ceilings, reveals and so on. As you're probably aware, the software does this by default. I'm now going to make the subcontract plasterer responsible for those materials. Firstly, I need to add a subcontract quote. Type in the contractor. That could be a generic term or it could be a specific person. I'm going to just put plasterer for now. Enter a brief description of the work. Then set the start date and the order date. Click OK to add that subcontract quote to Smart Scheduler. Now if I click Assign all 14 bags of plasterboard adhesive will be assigned to the plasterer, as he's going to do the ordering for those. I can now repeat this process for the plasterboard, tape, corner bead and so on. I can assign all the ordering of those materials to him. I'll just show you one more example. So next I've got the plasterboard. If I click Assign to Subcontractors, the subcontract quote is already there, so all I need to do is click Assign All, and the ordering of those plasterboard sheets will now be assigned to the subcontractor. These changes will flow through to the reports, so you're not prompted to order the materials yourself, but you do have a reminder to speak to the plasterer about supplying the materials. Just a quick note on filtering in Smart Scheduler. As you're beginning to see, there are various filters to help you view the schedule in smaller chunks. As well as materials, you can select labour or plant from the type of resource drop-down. As you've seen, you can select a particular build phase to review. You can also filter and review one particular type of resource, for example aggregates or insulation. There's also a view which allows you to view only the resources used in one build phase or the resources used in multiple build phases, if you'd like to approach your scheduling that way. Now let's take a moment to look at plant booking by selecting plant from the left-hand filter. I want to look at plant across the job, so I'm going to set the build phase filter to all. Let's take a look at the skip hire. For the foundations, we have a 6-yard skip specified. Let's see where else a 6-yard skip is going to be used by clicking Show this resource in all build phases. For the foundations, I need 3.74 6-yard skips, which has been rounded down to 3. I could save some money by swapping the 6-yard skips for 12-yard skips. The process is exactly the same as it is for swapping materials. Click Change Resource, select an alternative skip size, and add it to the Smart Schedule. I can now change the order quantity as appropriate. I could also add extra resources if needed. Say I wanted to hire 2 different size skips for the foundations phase. I could add the second size of skip and then set the order quantity as required. So instead of 2 12-yard skips, I could add an extra resource, select a 14-yard skip. You could add multiple resources at this point if you wanted, and then set the order quantity to 1 of each. This will give me a bit of extra capacity. You can also add material and labour resources using the Add Extra Resources button. Once all the decisions have been made, you can call off your reports. Let's take a look at the different reports, starting with Materials by Build Phase. All of the reports can be accessed via the navigator on the left-hand side of the screen. The Materials by Build Phase report is a good internal report to sense check what you need for each build phase. You can see a summary of what you need to order for each build phase. If you notice that anything needs changing, you can go back to Smart Scheduler and make adjustments as required. Next, the Materials by Order Date report. This looks at the same data in a slightly different way. It groups the materials into order dates. You can filter the report to show a specific date range using the filters on the right. Once you've selected your date range, click Apply Changes. The next report is the Material Order Report. This is a report that you could give to your merchant. This report can be filtered by merchant. For example, you could create a Crystal Direct order list, or one for another linked merchant, such as Travis Perkins. All of the reports can be printed or exported as a PDF or other document type to be emailed to your merchant. The Labour Order Report shows who you need on site and when. The quantity column shows the number of hours required. Similarly, the Plant Order Report shows what plant and tools you need on site and when. Next we have the Subcontractor Report. The Subcontractor Report shows which subbies are needed on site and when. It also lists the materials each subcontractor is ordering. So here you can see all of the materials I've assigned to the plasterer. The Sundries Order Report shows what sundry items are needed, if you have any. So from within any report, Don't forget you can export the report to email it to relevant people. Alternatively, you can print off a report using the print button. Use your printouts as useful checklists. Cross things off as you sort them and give yourself a sanity check. So hopefully these videos have given you a good understanding of how Smart Scheduler works. If you'd like any further help or advice, please get in touch with our tech support team.